Hi Mona. So I'll show you what I meant. I'm going to use Studio 2017 for this, but everything I'm going to show you up to a point you can do with Studio 2015 and earlier versions. I'll tell you what that point is when I get to it. So the first thing is, just let me show you what I mean by adding the terms. So I've just set my layout, so I've got the term-based viewer on the bottom right down here, and my term recognition and term-based search on the top. That's just to make it easier to see things while I'm doing this. So what I'm going to do is, say for example, I wanted to add the word reason, just for the sake of argument. And I'll take reason in source and target. So I'm just doing English to English for the sake of this little demonstration. So rather than quick add new term, although I could just quick add new term, if I just quick add new term, you'll see it adds it straight away, and I have a client there called Microsoft. So I've added this to my term base with this attribute, with a client called Microsoft. This attribute could be anything. It could be a domain, it could be legal, pharmaceutical, medical, whatever you want. I just chose to do it with different clients. I'll show you why in a minute. Then if I decide that I wanted to add this term again, but this time I wanted to add it to a different term base, because I can't do that, I can add it to a different client on the basis of the fact that I'm assuming you'd have different term bases for different clients or for different purposes. So if I click add new term again, it's going to tell me it's already there, but do I want to edit it? And I can say yes. And at that point, I can go into here, and because I've created a little pick list of all my different clients, it could just be text, but I've created a pick list. I could say, okay, I also want to make this for my Hewlett-Packard client on those two, and save it. So I've now added the same term, rather than to two term bases, but to two clients. Now, in actual fact, what I could have done, if I was adding the word different, I could add new terms just like that straight away, and when I add it, I could just pick all of the clients I wanted to add that term to, then and there, save it. So then I've added that to all three. So that one's to 3 clients, that one's to 2 clients, and this one's to 2 clients. Now the other point to note here is that because I've actually set an input model, I'll show you that in a second. I've created an input model called client. This allows me to add a term very quickly to whatever I've set as being the default client. And in this case, I've said Microsoft is my default client. So if I just wanted to add the words explaining, and I just quick add new term, when I do that, it adds it very quickly and automatically uses Microsoft. So if I'm adding them all the time for the Microsoft client, and it's just an exception to add it to the others, this is perfect, because I can just set the input model to use the default client that I want. So I hope that you see what I mean from that perspective. So I can have, it's my simple term base, but instead of having multiple term bases, I have multiple clients. Now, let me show you how you get them out, because clearly having them like that, the purpose for it would be to then be able to create a term base for your client, for one of those clients. So what I can do now is if I just close Studio for a second, and I'm coming over to multi-term. So I'm using multi-term 17 here, and everything I've shown you so far is possible in all versions, Studio 2015 and earlier. What I'm going to show you now is possible up to a point. So first of all, to create the definition, in case you didn't know how to do that, if I just edit the definition of this term base, when I created it, I gave it my friendly name, I picked my languages, and then I created a field label which I called client. And on that field label, if you haven't seen this before, it could be it could be various types of data type. I made it a pick list and added Microsoft, Dell, Hewlett-Packard, Acme. It could be as many as I like. Just because if I use a pick list, it's consistent and the data will always be the same. And then what I also did, well, that was it. And I put the pick list on the term. I could have picked that pick list anywhere, but I just decided to put it on the term. But I could have put it on the entry level, I could have put it on the language level. I chose to put it on the term level. Okay, so that's my structure. Now what I then did was I created an input model. And the input model is what allows me to make sure those fields are always available to me when I'm working, rather than me having to activate them. So if I look what that looks like, if you create new when you do this, you get a little input model wizard. So I called it client, and I just told it this is everything I want it to display, which is basically the entire definition when I'm working. And I then said, give myself a default value, so I can change the default value. At the moment it's Microsoft, but I could have made it anything I wanted. And by doing that, when I select the input model, it will automatically add the terms straight away to that particular client. Now I could have created multiple input models, and then you could just select the input model for that client, and then it would be even easier because the default would be set, and you'd only have to add new term and edit it when you wanted to add an additional client to save the term in an additional client's term base or an additional domain term base, whatever you've used it for. Okay, so that was the input model. Now, up to this point, that's exactly how it works. And even in multi-term, you can see here, you can select different input models. So that's my client's input model, and you can see when I go to add one, it automatically displays all the different fields. If I cancel that, if I didn't select the input model, then here, when I go to click add new, you can see that I have to then go in here and start messing around and picking the client and then doing it. So using the input model means that you can specify what information is shown to you automatically to make it easier to edit. So input models are quite powerful, especially if you have complicated term-based models. Now, the last thing I want to show you, this is the bit that's only in Studio and Multiterm 2017. So it's possible now to do batch exports. And where this gets quite powerful is you can create an export model. So what I've done is I've created a client export. And to do that, I have to create a filter first, and this is new. So in my filter, I've just set in here, and again I could have created one for each client or each domain, but I've just created one for the time being just to show you how that works. I've created a simple filter, and I've said, for example, what I want to do is to export all of these fields if the value of my field contains the word Microsoft. So I've clicked on client down here and I've said if it contains Microsoft. So I want to be able to export the data for my Microsoft client, just my Microsoft client, and click on next, finish. And I've then used that filter in the export model. So if I just edit my export model, see I created one called client here. When I click on next, here's my client. I'm exporting it to a file called client XML, and I'm applying a filter down here. So the filter used to be just source contains synonyms, but now you can specify your own filters using the batch export process, which is pretty cool. And now I can say next, complete export, next, and finish. And what that's done is that's exported for me this, oh, what did I do with it? I've lost it. Let me go and do it again. I must have done something wrong there. I did do something wrong there. I was editing it. I didn't actually process it. My bad. So let me go back here again. So I should have gone export. I should have gone process. So I need to process that client. Check, make sure that's there. Next. Export terms. Okay. Finish. This time I should have the XML file, which I do. It's down there. And now I'm just going to move that XML and put it over here. And the reason I'm putting it here is because if I use the Glossary Converter now, the Glossary Converter is pretty cool because it can also just convert a multi-term XML. And if I edit out, so I just ignore the client field, what that means now is I can create a term base just with that drag and drop that contains only the terms and not the client name, which is perfect. Because now when I exit, there's my term base, and I could just give that to my client if that's what I was doing. If it was a spreadsheet, I'd just give them the spreadsheet. You can convert it to spreadsheet, but there it is. And actually, you can see it looks slightly different there because that's the default layout for Multiterm 2017. But if I wanted the flags layout, there you go. Looks like that. So no client name. So it becomes a really powerful mechanism if in advance you set these up. So if you set these up in advance, you can have one for each client. It doesn't take very long, and once you've done it, you can reuse them again and again and again, and then it's very quick to be able to manage your data in just one term base. And that's sort of the power of one of the additions to Multiterm 2017 that will be available very, very soon. So anyway, I hope that explains what I meant, and I hope that's useful.